We are commencing legal action against Mrs. Meghan Markle. Her televised allegations, particularly the Oprah interview, have inflicted undue harm upon the royal family. An apology no longer suffices. The matter will now proceed through
The pen didn't just touch paper, it detonated a royal earthquake that Buckingham Palace hoped no one would hear until it was already too late. Inside a sealed room, behind doors that don't just close but erase sound itself, King Charles made a decision that didn't feel like ink, it felt like a line being carved through blood. No announcement, no warning, no negotiation. Just a signature, and suddenly, Meghan was no longer Duchess of Sussex. And here's the chilling part: by the time the world even suspected something was wrong, the damage was already permanent. Because this wasn't just about a title, it was about control, about identity, about a monarchy that had been quietly watching, waiting, calculating, and when it finally moved, it moved without mercy. Charles didn't celebrate. That's what makes this even darker. He stayed seated, staring at the document like it might somehow rewrite itself. But it didn't, because this wasn't hesitation anymore, this was execution. Every delay had already been judged too dangerous, every compromise seen as weakness. The Sussex name, still echoing across interviews, deals, and global platforms, had become something the palace could no longer contain. And silence became the loudest clue of all. Only a tiny circle even knew this document existed. Not leaks, not whispers, not even senior figures were allowed near it. That level of secrecy doesn't happen unless something explosive is about to happen. Charles didn't want interference. He didn't want pressure. He didn't want anyone softening the blow. He wanted it done. And then came the second strike, quiet, buried, but devastating. It wasn't just about removing a title. It was about controlling the future. New limits, new restrictions, a tightening grip on how Harry and Meghan could present themselves to the world. Interviews, projects, appearances, nothing would be untouched. This wasn't a reaction. This was strategy. Across the Atlantic, Meghan had no idea. Think about that for a second. While the ink was drying in London, she was living under an identity that had already been erased. Every future announcement already outdated. Every planned move already disrupted. And at the center of this storm, three people. Charles torn between crown and blood. Meghan holding onto a title she believed she earned. Harry caught in the middle, watching the last piece of his old life slip away. This is where it stops being royal protocol and starts becoming painfully human. Because Charles knew exactly what this would do to Harry. He knew this could break whatever fragile connection remained. But he also believed something even more dangerous, that doing nothing would break the monarchy itself. So what do you choose? Your son or the crown? Harry didn't hear it through headlines. He heard it in a private warning, a quiet call, the kind that doesn't come unless something is already too far gone. And when he asked the only question that mattered, has he signed it? The silence answered first. That silence said everything. Meghan walked in moments later, one look at Harry's face and she knew. Not confusion, not doubt. Something irreversible had happened. And when she read the words, standing, refusing to even sit down, it wasn't just shock. It was calculation. Because for Meghan, this wasn't just a title. This was identity. This was branding. This was every interview, every appearance, every carefully built narrative suddenly being challenged at its core. And here's where things get even more complicated. William didn't celebrate either. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. But he did agree with the decision. Not emotionally, strategically. To him, titles weren't shields. They came with responsibility. And using them without that responsibility, that, in his eyes, was the real threat. But Harry wouldn't see it that way. To Harry, this wasn't strategy. This was betrayal. And then there's Camilla watching from the side, already predicting the fallout, because she understood something critical. The public wouldn't see months of pressure, debate, and warnings. They would see one thing, a signature. And they would attach that signature to one man, Charles. But here's the twist that changes everything the moment this stopped being a slow burn and became inevitable. Weeks before that signature, something happened behind closed doors at Windsor. A private gathering. No cameras, no phones, no leaks allowed. The kind of meeting designed to fix everything quietly. Instead, it destroyed everything completely. Because Meghan said something that didn't just challenge the palace, it challenged the conversation. Didn't unfold like a royal meeting, it collided like a breaking point that had been building for years. Harry accused Charles of turning Meghan into a target simply for refusing silence. For refusing to play by rules that Harry believed had already been rewritten behind closed doors. Harry's frustration wasn't controlled anymore, it was raw, sharp, and impossible to disguise. And Charles answered, not with volume, but with something colder. Accountability. possibility, that was the word Charles leaned on, the word that cut deeper than any raised voice. Because to Charles, this wasn't about emotion, it was about the monarchy being pulled into every interview, every project, every public moment that carried a title but rejected its limits. When Harry reached for the folder, the air shifted. The sound of the paper, the sharp placement back onto the table, even the slight tremble of the glass nearby it all felt louder than anything they had said. Harry demanded clarity, demanded to know if the decision had already been sealed. And Charles gave Harry one final path. Narrow and fragile Meghan could keep a private connection to the Sussex name, but not a public or commercial one. It was the last compromise, the last bridge standing between resolution and collapse. Harry rejected it, not slowly, not carefully, completely, because to Harry, that compromise wasn't protection, it was control. It was the palace still defining Meghan's identity even after everything they had stepped away from. And in that moment, something final settled between them. Charles didn't argue, Charles didn't push further, Charles simply closed the folder. That quiet movement carried more weight than anything else that had happened, because that was the moment the decision stopped being a possibility and became inevitable. Harry walked to the door, paused, as if searching for something, one sentence, one shift, one chance to pull everything back, but nothing came. And when the door closed, it didn't just end the conversation. It ended the last space where reconciliation could still exist. From that point, everything moved with precision. Advisors aligned, recommendations hardened. William stood firm, not out of emotion, but out of what William saw as necessity clarity for the future, boundaries that couldn't be blurred any longer. Camilla watched the process unfold with unease, already understanding how it would look when it reached the public, one signature, one decision, one man carrying the weight of it all. And Charles listened to every argument, every warning, every projection of what would happen next until the room fell silent under Charles' own raised hand. The responsibility would be Charles alone. When the document was placed in front of Charles, it wasn't just paper, it was the final version of everything that had built toward this moment. Notifications were already being prepared. Systems were ready. The second the pen moved, this would stop being private and start becoming irreversible reality. And when Charles signed, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was controlled, deliberate, and final. Across the ocean, the impact didn't arrive with ceremony. Meghan opened the message expecting another disagreement, another round of tension, but the first line stopped everything. The title was gone, not suspended, not reviewed. Gone, Harry stood there watching Meghan read, watching disbelief turn into something harder, something more controlled, because Meghan didn't collapse. Meghan calculated. Every project, every announcement, every plan built around that name suddenly shifted under Meghan's feet. Meghan read the lines again, slower this time, absorbing the full weight of what had been taken. And when Meghan asked the question, he actually signed it, the silence between them answered just as loudly as the truth. That silence carried guilt. Harry knew it. Harry had seen the possibility, understood the risk, but held on to hope instead of warning Meghan. And those few seconds of hesitation when Meghan asked, that was enough. Meghan saw it. Meghan understood it. And in that realization, the fracture didn't just exist between households anymore, it existed inside the room they were standing in. But what followed didn't explode. It didn't turn into another war. Meghan called advisors, examined every line, every consequence, every immediate impact. A major project built around the Sussex identity was now disrupted before it could even be announced. The timing wasn't accidental. It was precise. And then came the choice. Fight again or finally step away. Late into the night, away from advisors, away from pressure, Meghan and Harry faced what remained without interruption. Meghan admitted what the loss felt like, not just public humiliation, but erasure of something Meghan believed had been earned. Harry admitted the truth Charles had warned Harry. The possibility had been real, and Harry had chosen silence over certainty. The anger softened, but the damage stayed. And then Meghan made the decision that changed the direction of everything. No immediate legal battle, no explosive counterattack, no feeding the cycle that had already consumed years of their lives. Control, that's what Meghan chose. Harry followed, tearing apart a draft filled with accusations, ending not just a statement, but a pattern. When Charles received their restrained response, there was no victory in it, only a quiet acknowledgement that the conflict had reached a point where even silence carried meaning. By morning, the world had already turned the decision into something massive. Headlines, debates, argument supporters calling Charles decisive, critics calling the move cold and personal. Meghan's image printed beneath words that reduced everything to a single reality. And as crowds gathered, as cameras rolled, as voices rose, the truth became impossible to ignore.